ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another Spotlight interview with Global Thought Leaders, an initiative by RightSource Global. I am Zishan Pathan, Executive Director at RightSource Global and a Council member of Global Thought Leaders. Along with me, I have my colleague, friend, and a Council member of Global Thought Leaders, Heval Mehta, Chief Growth Officer at RSG. Global Thought Leaders is a platform for industry stalwarts to cross-pollinate with their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices to inspire each other and future leaders. Through spotlight interviews, we strive to bring the community of eminent personalities together from across the globe. We collate the multi-decadal learnings acquired by proliferating brains in a nutshell. We bring the expertise of various functions, roles, and sectors together on one platform to inspire future leaders. We have one such industry stalwart today on Spotlight with us, Sanjay Manohar. I would request Heval to introduce our today's eminent personality, who is a renowned face globally. Over to you, Heval.
Well, thank you so much, Zishan, for giving me this opportunity to introduce Sanjay. Well, a renowned face, a renowned name. An honor to introduce Sanjay today. Well, Sanjay Manohar is the managing director of McAfee India. In his current role, he is responsible for driving accelerated adoption of McAfee's cloud products, enhancing enterprise-centric product revenues, and improving customer satisfaction across the region. With a career spanning over 25 years, Sanjay's expertise encompasses sales management and marketing domains across Southeast Asia, China, and Asia Pacific markets. He has in the past held leadership roles at technology giants such as Akamai, Oracle, and Dell at the time when cloud solution had just begun reshaping the global IT industry. Sanjay is a performance-oriented team leader and is committed to building and managing high-caliber teams functioning in complex environments. His core strength includes go-to-market strategy and execution, supplemented by his expertise in areas of SaaS, enterprise software, and networking. As an industry veteran, his leadership qualities have been instrumental in fostering innovation across organizations he has worked for, resulting in aggressive growth targets being achieved efficiently. His previous roles at Akamai Technologies were as Regional Vice President, Asia Pacific Japan, Career Business, and Managing Director of Greater China Region. He also held various positions in Oracle prior to that. Sanjay holds an MBA from the Bharat Desan Institute of Management, a Bachelor of Science degree from Bangalore University, and is an alumnus of the Rashtriya Military School. Sanjay actively supports the Akshay Patra Foundation, the Karun Shreya Hospice in Bangalore, and the Zoo Outreach Foundation Conservation NGO in Coimbatore. He's passionate about 20th century world affairs and military history, particularly those involving China. We welcome Sanjay Manohar to the spotlight.
Thank you very much, Heval. Thank you very much, Zishan. It is a great pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you very much for inviting me. RightSource Global is a very well-known name. The series of spotlight interviews that you're doing is really becoming very popular, especially amongst many of my employees and amongst millennials. And it's really good to be here. So thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And I hope I can do justice to what you have to ask me for today.
Great, Sanjay. Great to have you on the spotlight today. Well, Sanjay, there is an unheard story behind every successful individual that we cover on the platform of Global Thought Leaders, and same is with you. So your journey is inspirational for everyone in the country. What has really driven you to achieve this fit? I mean, we would really like to know your inspiration for achieving this today.
Okay. See, we are all driven to do multiple things. And frequently, the background that we come from has a lot to do with it. Background and where one spends his first couple of years, the formative years of work. So for me, I come from a middle-class background. My parents were academics. My father was a professor at the Indian Institute of Science, well-known institute, premier institute in Bangalore. And my mother is an artist, and she was also principal of the Karnataka Chitrikala Parishad. So I'm very proud of what they stand for. And the emphasis while I was growing up, was on excelling, learning, and it was a competitive atmosphere at home. These basic values have, really carried forward to my corporate career as well. And it also resonates with two of McAfee's corporate values: to achieve excellence with speed and agility, and to you play to win or don't play at all. So these were two values which are close to my heart, which happen to be McAfee values, and something that I grew up with. All right. So it's really the family values which drives me. The second thing which has driven me, especially in my earlier years, and which has a root in my background, is financial independence. Here in India, we don't talk so much about money being a motivator, but we need to recognize that it's a very legitimate motivator for for a lot of people in India, especially those coming from a more humbler background. For me, growing up in a middle class family, growing up in pre-liberalization India, it was my desire to be well off and to afford the good things in life for myself and my family. That was a big driver for me, and I want to be very, very honest about that, because it's something which we all must recognize. And when you want something like this, it really drives you to do things. So that was the second big motivator for me. But completely separate from my background, which I feel that has driven me in a big way, and which drives me today, is my desire to win. In corporate parlance, it is a drive for results and outcomes. A big part of my career has been in sales and in marketing. And for someone who's aspiring for such a career, it's a fundamental desire or trait to want to win. Okay, it's very, very fundamental to win business, to win the trust of customers, to win the trust of employees. It's all very important. It's very, very fundamental to me, and that's what I also look for in people who I hire. So that's my third driver. Lastly, and very closely linked to this desire to win, is passion. I'm passionate about the things that matter to me, and I also admire this trait in people around me. I'm fortunate to work in McAfee with people who are very passionate about their job and their roles. It's not easy working for an enterprise cybersecurity company. We are on a journey which is, bigger than any one of us individually. We protect organizations from, cyber threat that is big. It is growing. It is very unique. We go through situations that many people in other companies may not necessarily go through. And some of our customers are very large, prestigious organizations, both in government and in private sector. And when there is a threat, it can be very demanding and it can be very tough sometimes. Of course, it's also rewarding and a lot of fun. But all of this, when you put it together, it needs a lot of passion and needs a lot of energy. So as a leader, I try to kindle this in people. And when I see this passion and energy around me and people, I find it very infectious and uplifting. So, I hope I've answered your question. What really drives me? These are the things which really make me tick and which make me wake up in the morning and want to go to work. So,
These are really inspiring, Sanjay. I must say that, and all the viewers would really enjoy this conversation, because that logically brings me to another question. Sanjay, you have multi-decadal experience. Now, what are the top three challenges you have come across, and how did you overcome them during this journey?
okay, this is a really this is a good question, and I want to try and answer this question in two parts. Okay, the first is I want to perhaps walk you through a few generic challenges which which a lot of people come across in their careers, and which of course I went through, and I want to give my perspective on these challenges. And then I want to walk you through, maybe give an through one specific challenge that I faced, and how I overcame that, something which is particularly close to my heart, and I want to walk you through that. So I hope that's okay. So at a high level, there are couple of things that all of us face anywhere in the world at any point, in our careers. The first one is, balancing work and family life. Uh, Many of us are very, very passionate about, why we get up in the morning and go to work. And that's because we love what we do. I mean, I know it's the same for you, Zishan, and for Heval as well. I mean, we all love what we do. We are all raring to go to work, do something meaningful, make a difference, and to work, and to talk and interact with all the wonderful people who are our colleagues. So that's something I really look forward to. But especially for young millennials and those, in the first maybe 20, 25 years of their careers, we sometimes tend to push the limits of time and extend things till late in the day. For us in the Indian culture, it is especially important to be seen as working very hard. And sometimes we take calls and work well after we get home. And don't mistake me, that's really a part of who we are, both as individuals and as Indians. It's a very important part of who we are and what we bring to the table, and very important to acknowledge that. However, as we get into relationships, marriage, and children, there are responsibilities which I myself realized, which are at odds with work, and I tended to stay in my comfort zone and leave the things that I didn't necessarily enjoy to my better half, and uh, the other party in the relationship for a lot of us. I don't mean to be judgmental, but that's really not good. I recognize that that was not really the good thing in the long term. So it's critically important early on to recognize that family and health are as important elements of your life as is work. And we need to learn to build that balance very early on. There was a story I heard many years back, which spoke about that all of us are juggling multiple balls, work, finance, health, and family. And of these, work and finance are rubber balls. So if you drop them, they will most probably bounce back. Okay. But family and health are glass balls. You drop them, they break, and it's very hard to get them back. So that's a very powerful analogy. Yeah, I don't recall who told me that, but it's still very fresh in my mind. And over a period of time, I've learned to balance it, hopefully. And that's my advice to young people out there, that it's good for them to balance that very early on. I also want to talk a little bit about the McAfee culture. A lot of what we do in McAfee is about balance, because we understand that our people have fairly tough jobs, tough careers in protecting large enterprise organizations. We strive to achieve, but we are also very cognizant that people have a life outside of work, and we are very accommodating, and our policies incorporate all these special circumstances. So I'm especially proud of two things in McAfee. Our return to work policy for young mothers who want to get back to work after a break, after a maternity break. And it's made a difference to so many people. And at the same time, we have also been able to hire a lot of extremely smart young people who are waiting to come back to work after maternity. And it's a great example of a programmatic achievement, of a programmatic approach to achieve excellence. The second thing that I'm really proud of is that the emphasis on me as a leader is to be caring, not just about the business. It's what my manager expects of me. It's what I expect of my leadership team, and it's all what we expect of each other. So that's that's the first thing. A generic challenge about balancing work and life, and what an important long-term impact it has for those people, those of us who get it right. So that's the first thing. The second challenge is, which some of us, I went through that, and I think I'd like to believe that a lot of other professionals also go through this. It's whether to work at a big company or a small company. I've had the great privilege to work at some really well-known companies like McAfee and Dell, Oracle, and Wipro. And one of the things that I realized very early in my career is that there is a trade-off when you work at a big company versus a small company. it's a bit of an oversimplification if I say that uh, the trade-off is being between a big fish in a small pond and a small fish in a big pond. And that's, I don't really like this analogy, but it came to mind. And I don't like it because it's presumptive. But nevertheless, I'm saying this to drive home a point. You know, in actual corporate life, it's less about big or small. It's more about the culture and freedom to operate. You know, both large and small companies are great places to work, and but there are key differences. You know, big companies have more established systems, policies, and you know a lot of them pay well, at least initially. But why am I saying it's a challenge? Why am I saying why was it a challenge for me? It's because you know I took time to develop that self awareness and to understand for myself what I really wanted in life. You know what I really wanted out of my corporate life, what I wanted deep down. So at many points in time, the choices were confusing. You know, no company or work environment really checked all the boxes for me. And for those of us who are comfortable with a greater degree of predictability and specialization, a bigger company may be the right place to work. For those who yearn for independence, freedom, and flexibility, probably a small company is better. For me, it took a long time, okay, for me to actually figure out, and I'll be very honest about that. You know, it's really when you know there are these conflicting things what you see in different companies. It's always a tough call, especially when the company that really appeals to you probably pays less than you know a company which doesn't. So one may go through that at different points in you know his career, and these tough choices are always there. What kind of a company do you want to work for? And the way I answered it is, you know, for me, I'm personally very comfortable in working in smaller companies. And you know, while you know there are some really big opportunities in big companies, my advice is to look within and take a call very, very objectively. You know, the answer lies within each of us. So the third, you know, is something which you know all of us. It's a bit of a philosophical challenge. You know, tough situations. When do you continue, and when do you strategically give it a pass? You know, one of the big challenges for every manager or employee, you know, almost every day, is when does one continue the struggle, or when does one tactically give in? You know, it's in corporate life, it is very deeply ingrained in us that we all are very passionate people, and we vocally make a case for what we stand for, you know, every day, you know, in many meetings, many discussions. So we every day we have a set of things that we want to achieve. We feel very strongly about how we want to go about achieving these things. But every day is also about working with a lot of people, you know, and some of who have very different views on how to achieve those exactly same objectives. You know, at the end of the day, we are all on the same journey. In McAfee, for example, we strive to hire uh, the best and the smartest out there, who are capable of doing not just a great job, but people who can do a lot more in terms of innovation, in terms of thinking, in terms of challenging, you know, and collaborating. So then, of course, we train them and we set them up for success, and we try to give them an environment of transparency, openness, you know, and respect. But when you put a bunch of these smart people together, you know, in a room to solve, you know, a common problem, sometimes you can have differing views. So then there has to be compromise. Now, not compromise on some of the big objectives, but an accommodation on how we jointly go about achieving those big, hairy goals. Okay. And there's never a rule of thumb. And, you know, it's again a challenge that, you know, all of us come across every day, that I go through and a lot of people go across. When do you know, continue to pursue your point of view? When do you tactically give in and compromise and accommodate the other people there in that room? So there's no there's no right answer for us for it, but still I think it's a critical challenge, and it's something that can actually define a person's long-term success. Because you know, some of the best and the brightest sometimes don't know when to stop. You know, some the ones who have that diplomacy and tact, in addition to that ability to innovate, are the ones who are probably more successful in the long term. And that's something which I urge every one of us to actually think that through. All right. So these are three high level generic challenges that I faced and I continue to face. And now I want to actually, in answer to your question, I want to walk you through one very specific business challenge, one of the biggest challenges that I faced in my career, and how I tried to overcome that. A few years back, I was asked to take up an international assignment at very short notice in my previous company, not McAfee. There was a significant ethics issue, a serious issue which had come up in another country in my previous company, which I did not have the experience of working in, and but my company wanted me to go there and stabilize things, for a few weeks or a few months. For me, it was a tough decision whether to accept, because it was a tough assignment, but I did take up the challenge. So when I went to that country, and I'm not mentioning it because it's some of these things are a bit confidential, but you get the general idea when you look at my profile. So I did take up that assignment, and when I went there, I realized that there were three underlying issues. The first one was cultural, or environmental. There was a culture or an environment of distrust, because, as I mentioned, there was an ethics investigation, and a company investigation was underway. So the morale was low as a result. The culture was very negative. It was also very top down. It was not very democratic. And how I addressed this was, though I had not physically moved there completely, I did spend a long time there, several weeks at a stretch. And that physical presence was very important for me to get to know people. And not from a corporate standpoint, but I genuinely wanted to get to know them, because it was very important for me to actually lay that foundation of trust before moving on to some of the business issues. And I also try to earn their trust by visibly doing things to solve their problems, day-to-day problems. Um, and most importantly, though I was unsure how long I would stay in that location, how long that assignment was going to be, I took decisions for the long term. Okay, so that really helped actually build that trust, that when people saw me as a leader who might be there for the short term, but really is doing things for the long term. Above all, and this is something which is very important for me throughout my corporate life, all the hiring, all the recruitment I did, I made sure that we tried to hire the best and the brightest out there, and that's very, very fundamental to me. And also provide them with an environment that everyone would thrive. So from an environmental standpoint, that was the problem that I faced, and that's what I tried to do to try and address it. Uh, which comes to my second big underlying issue, the business. You know, where you have an ethics investigation, that something is not right. So there were questionable business practices, and execution was not really very solid. So how I addressed that was, while I'm flexible about a lot of things, I made sure that I communicated that business practices were completely, in black and white. I was completely inflexible in adhering to corporate policy, and I set the tone very clearly, very early on what was legitimate and what was not. So, so it became very easy for people to understand what the expectations were from my side, in spite of the fact that there was a language problem, and it was other things. I made sure that I got that point across. The second thing is execution. Any well-run business, the has to meet its financial objectives, and for that, execution excellence is something very fundamental. But it's also something very tough to achieve, especially when in these evolving things are moving so quickly these days. So, but my belief in execution is that it all starts with the nuts and bolts and getting into weeds. A lot of leaders are, their styles are different, but mine is very clearly to get into the weeds and get to understand the business. It all starts and ends with defining the metrics that we need to achieve our business goals, and then to drive those metrics relentlessly, by monitoring, by weekly cadences, and just to keep not lose sight of those metrics. And initially, while it may be difficult, over a period of time, that discipline builds up, that discipline and execution, and then it eventually becomes a successful business. So that's how I addressed the underlying business issues. And the third and the last business issue that I faced was with customers. See, no matter what great products or services a company has, sometimes there is a gap, a credibility gap with customers. And in that company, our customers didn't like us because we didn't meet our commitments and on quality and service. So I took pains to understand what really mattered to customers, and to also understand the business levers in that country. See, at the end of the day, for any successful business, whether it's yours or mine, it's really all about understanding. It starts and ends with the customer. It's not necessarily about giving everything that the customer wants, but it's about that balance between what's good for customers and what's good for company and employees. And fortunately, I was able to strike that balance fairly early on, and we managed to move forward on improving our credibility with customers and getting customers to really love us and build those relationships. So net, I had a good team there, and perhaps I got lucky, but everything worked out, and our business grew rapidly, and we took share from our competitors. Employee engagement went up, attrition went down, and instead of weeks or months, I actually spent 4 years, in that country, and running a very successful business. So when I look back on it, I think that's the biggest challenge that I faced, and it fortunately worked out well. Of course, there are other challenges that I faced where things don't always work out, because we also need to accept that. But this is an example which was a challenge which I managed to work with the team, and we had a good outcome.
Well, Sanjay, I really love the way you've explained with the help of analogies and the real life examples, and the experience that you've got while handling the global role, right? And in fact, you have segregated them into well-defined points so that it appears as if it's a mind map for everyone to absorb very clearly. Sanjay, I would like to know what are the key highlights of your personality which you think have added to your growth?
Okay, so okay, so there are 3 or 4 that I can call out, and the first one, and this is something which I really think I'm all about. It's a drive for results. Okay, now it's easy enough to say a drive for results, but it's a slightly different kettle of fish when to try and stay unerringly focused on a drive for results with the exclusion of everything else, at the same time, to balance business success with people success, and also do it with integrity. So a drive for results never comes just by itself. It comes with managing other things which are equally important, like people and integrity. So I think I have it. I'd like to believe I have it. And but I definitely think that it's very important for me to keep developing it. And if there's one critical trait for a business leader, which I think is important, I think it is this one. So the second one is something which all of us will relate to. It is resourcefulness. Okay, I believe a lot of us Indians have this ability, to improvise in tough situations, in jugaad, as you call it. And some of us do it definitely better than others. I think it's an ability that I have as well. I've been told that by my managers, that I have the ability to make do with what I have, to find innovative ways to overcome tough situations, tough and unexpected situations. The important thing really is to know when to draw the line in improvising, because innovation and creativity may involve some bending of the rules occasionally, but breaking the rules is a complete no-no. So, I think there is merit in improvising, innovation, and creativity, but rules are black and white, and I think that we have to understand that you can't break the rules. So that's something which the second thing which I think is an important part of who I am and what's made me successful. The third thing is resilience. We all go through tough situations. There are tough situations happening in every business, and all of us can relate to that. Um, Psychological resilience is the ability really to cope with a crisis and then return to pre-crisis state, as quickly as possible. It's like rubber, trying to be like that. Um, I believe resilience exists when a person is able to protect oneself from the negative elements of all the things that stress us out. In other words, in simpler terms, it is there in people who have developed the psychological and behavioral capabilities to stay calm during a crisis. Uh, I was always not like that, but it's something which people can develop. It's not that people are born, with an innate ability to stay calm. But over a period of time, I have managed to develop that, and that has helped me in through a lot of my tough situations. Zishan, the last thing, the fourth one, which I think is an important part of my personality and what has made me successful, is empathy. you know uh, Empathy and the ability to carry people along at a fundamental level. We all have a particular vision or a way to that, or a plan on how we want to do things, and we all are very clear about how we want to do it when we are operating by ourselves. But it's a slightly different ball game when you're working in a large organization where you have to carry the people along with you. All right, so there has to be buy-in to that vision, and it's that ability to create a vision to carry people along. I've seen that in a lot of other great leaders that I've had the privilege to work with. It's something that I'm still working on, but I believe it's something that I recognize as being very important, and and I continue to try to do better on that. But again, it's something which is very important to me personally. It's something that I work on, to carry people along with me, to make sure that I see their viewpoint and to take them on a journey which is bigger than themselves. And that's the fourth part of my personality, which I think has helped me tremendously. So,
Sanjay, I must acknowledge that these are amazing insights that you have given about your personality. Sanjay, you have worked on global roles, right? So, according to you, what are the key parameters that need to be handled differently while handling global roles?
okay, this is an absolutely great question. It's a great question. There was a time early on in my career where the number of Indians who are going out to take global roles was few. Either people moved to the US and in fairly mid-level positions and then worked their way upward. But the time has come. I mean, really, our time has come. You have a lot of Indians who are going out in leadership roles. Okay, there's a big difference between going in an individual contributor capacity, and then it's difference in going out and into leadership roles. Okay, and for me, I had the good fortune in a couple of companies that I worked to do international roles, and I thought there are a few things which have to be handled differently. Okay, there are four specifically. The first is cultural sensitivity, and I'll tell you what I mean about that. The second one is language clarity. Third, and probably this is the most important, is an authenticity. A genuineness. Be genuine. And the fourth one is the concept of time, which is something which I like to talk about that as well. So let me explain what I mean, starting with cultural sensitivity. See, understanding cultural differences between the way we operate here and the way wherever you're going to operates is absolutely essential in international roles. If you get it right, you lay the foundations for a great working relationship. But if you get it wrong, you can cause offense. It can lose business, it can lose trust, and at best, it can, just uh, make you out of place in that beautiful country that you're doing business in. So we grew up with certain ways and customs, and but when we go to a different culture, it is critically important to understand, to not simply assume that our customs are acceptable there. Okay. So it's very important to understand what is acceptable in that country and to stay clear of that. Minor insensitivity may be brushed off. People are accommodating, maybe brushed off with an embarrassed smile. But there are some forms of cultural insensitivity which can really irk employees over there, customers and partners. And especially when somebody is going in a leadership role, I think we must know better. So just to give you an example, failing to bow in the right manner in China or Japan, or using your left hand to hand over an object in Thailand or the Middle East is completely inappropriate. And also in countries like Australia and US, it's critically important to speak directly. In some cultures like India, we are very diplomatic. We kind of, like to go about it in a slightly roundabout manner. But especially in the US, where India has a lot of business contact, it's very important to speak very, very directly. So that's a big difference. There are other more minor things like in France or in some other countries like East Asian countries, the handshake is given very lightly. I mean, you don't grab the guy by his fist and you pump it. So it's just done very, very, very lightly. While we might be used to doing things, a handshake in a different way. Also chit chat. Pre business discussion we start with. In India, we do that, and many other countries do that. But in certain other countries like Germany and Netherlands, you don't do that. It's a very direct culture. You get straight down to business, and people don't understand it if you kind of talk about the weather or the traffic or something else there. So one has to be very, very mindful. So this cultural awareness is goes beyond just understanding what is right and what is wrong in those countries. It's really in understanding local customs, okay, traditions, the way governments do business, the way the economy operates. It's really when you put all this together, it's really about one word. It's about sensitivity. And you go in there, you don't assume that what you have been doing all along will work. You pay attention to how things operate. It's just about keeping your eyes and ears open. It's as simple as that. Developing that sensitivity. For me, I never went through any complex training programs. I didn't have the opportunity to be coached by someone. I just went in, I kept my eyes and ears open, and I understood what was being expected of me, and I played along. So, and I tried to demonstrate that in day to day. So that was very important to me. The second thing, and I can't stress this enough, it is language clarity. English is widely used in so many parts of the world, and but it's understood slightly differently in different countries. We need to understand that. In India, we have a certain way of speaking English, and I don't mean the accent. It is when I'm speaking English to another Indian, I tend to leave out certain words just because it's understood. I leave it out because the other person understands it. We all speak English the same way in India. But I realized very early on in an international assignment that speaking English the same way in India leads to miscommunication. Then I made a few changes, okay, and I made 4 changes. The first is speed. We Indians tend to speak English uh, very rapidly, just like we would speak in our mother tongues or Hindi. You have to speak slower when you go to a Singapore or a Malaysia or a China or a Japan or even the US. You have to speak a little slower. The second thing is vocabulary. There is certain parts of our vocabulary which is very Indian. Words like lakh or crore, they're not used outside India. And when we go there, we mechanically tend to use these things like, oh, I paid 1 lakh for it, or it's 2 crores of business. People don't understand that. So instead, we have to use millions or billions. Another word is curd. Most other English speaking countries use the word yogurt for curd. So these are just little examples. The third thing is how we frame our sentences. um, will you come with me for lunch? If that's the objective of a particular question, you're going to ask someone, coming for lunch? That's exactly how we ask here in India. But you can be well assured that people outside are not going to understand it in the same way. A better way to do is, will you join me for lunch in the cafeteria? So reframe the sentences. Don't assume that someone understands exactly what you mean or understand the context. That's the third thing. And the last thing is really to understand these subtle signals and body language. Some international cultures like the French tend to have a lot of emphasis on hand movements. It's very, very important. So paying attention to this and learning to develop that, is the fourth important thing in terms of language, clarity. you know uh, the third very big things that I learned to do differently in an international assignment was authenticity. When there is a cultural barrier, uh, uh, people are in two parties, whether it is an employee or whether it's a customer or whether it's a partner, people are trying to gauge how authentic is the person. All right. And in a country like India, where we build, where we do a lot of business on relationships, it's we have a way of understanding the genuineness or the authenticity of a person, and it comes across in the way we speak, in the way we talk. But we have to understand that in a different cultural context, it is very important for us to genuinely be authentic, and also to make sure that we give that the other party understands. So I think there are no ways to further describe it. Either a person is authentic or he's not. But in an international context, is very, very important to to put your cards out on the table and demonstrate the genuineness if you have to proceed with making a relationship or a business relationship, or working with a company there very successful. You have to be very, very genuine. And the last one is the importance of time and deadlines. We sometimes joke here in India on the stretchability of India time. And if you try and understand why we are inherently flexible in India on time, it's maybe because because of our traffic, because it's of our bureaucracy. I don't know why, but anyway, many other cultures are not tolerant of late arrivals or missed deadlines. If there's a time indicated, stick to it to the minute, or be prepared to pay a price. So that's what I learned. So these are four things which I hope will be helpful to whoever is watching this, on how one must do things differently in an international assignment.
Sanjay, I'm really enjoying this conversation with you. I'm sure all the viewers who are viewing this conversation have got great things to learn today. And the way you got into the minutest of the minute things, where you mentioned about language, culture, and in fact, speaking English differently at different places, right? So that really is helpful for, in fact, it's a great learning for me as well, right? Um, so, Sanjay, you have been into the leadership roles in various organizations, various renowned organizations. As a leader, what is your leadership philosophy? Most of us would really like to know.
Okay. So look, in my kind of industry, especially in my kind of industry, but almost every other company that I have worked in, everything really starts and ends with the customer. You know, I personally am driven by a need to understand my customer and prospects, and also to what are his pain points. You know, what challenges does he go through, and then to address these business challenges, to try and hire the best and the smartest people out there. You know, I know I've said it a few times in the same conversation, but everyone wants to hire the smartest and the best people. The challenge is how to do it when you have a limited budget. You know, you may not have a ton of money to pay the thing, or also in a limited period of time. You know, that's a challenge, you know, for all of us as leaders. But again, that's, for me, it's a fundamental part of my leadership philosophy, and something that I don't compromise on, even if it takes a little longer to hire you know, the best and the smartest people who can not just do their jobs, but to innovate, think, collaborate, challenge. You know, people who will create that healthy energy and that tension within the company. um, Another part of my leadership philosophy is to train people thoroughly. You know, people come in from with various different backgrounds, but especially in McAfee, we give them a very thorough training. We have a wonderful online university, and we take a lot of pains to make sure that the content is you know, very up to date, and we really drill people, you know, almost like a, you know, a military establishment, so that, you know, when we are setting them up for success, because we have a critical role to do. You know, our job is to protect big government organizations, big enterprises, cybersecurity, and these are under attack on a daily basis. So that training is very important. But also very important is to give people a great deal of independence, treat them with respect, give them that openness and transparency which everyone wants. Everyone wants it, and, you know, we try and give that, you know, at every twist and turn. It's fundamental to our corporate culture, and it's something that we all, very important to my leadership philosophy as well. The next thing is execution. You know, I spoke about how important execution is, so I don't want to talk about that again, especially, you know, given that we have a stop in 7 minutes. But to execute flawlessly is critically important, and for that, you know, I think aside from setting the expectations to everyone, I think it's very important to have a long range strategic plan, and also to have a short range and a medium term plan to capitalize with great clarity and focus to leverage on you know, the limited resources that we have. See, no company has unlimited resources, and countries are big, and India is a big country, China is a big country. Even if you have 100 people out there, you have to deploy them in a very focused and you know, in a very you know, organized and a very thoughtful way, which maximizes output for the business. I think that's another important part of my philosophy. You know, we don't do a peanut butter. We're very focused on which segments, which products, and you know, who we can do a really great job on, because we want to be number one. So, but above all, you know, what gets it all together is a compelling vision, you know, that drives and unifies the organization. You know, a common purpose, if I may call it that. So look, everyone has passion. You know, all people are born with passion. Everyone wants to do something meaningful, but it's up to a leader to really tap into that passion and make it all come out. And there is no greater purpose in life than being on a journey which is bigger than yourself. You know, and that's the journey we are on in McAfee. So that sums up my leadership philosophy.
Great insights, Sanjay. That brings me to a very interesting question, Sanjay. The aspiring future thought leaders would like to be guided to avoid mistakes in their career path. Getting that guidance from you, Sanjay, would definitely be a value add. Can you throw some light on the mistakes that future thought leaders must avoid aligning their goals better?
Okay. So I'll talk to you very frankly about two mistakes that I made a lot of them, by the way. I mean, we all make mistakes. I have my share of mistakes. So, but there are two career mistakes that I made, and I definitely want to share this with you know, people out there. You know, the first and the biggest mistake is to take a career decision based on salary alone or compensation alone. You know, I used to work for this wonderful organization called Digital Equipment. Now it's no longer exists as Digital Equipment. It got acquired by Compaq, and Compaq got acquired by HP. but it was a wonderful organization to work for, and I had a good role in that position, in that company, reporting to the managing director of digital at that point in time, Som Mittal, who eventually went on to become president of NASCOM, a towering industry leader. So I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the culture, I enjoyed the company, my boss was a wonderful boss. But I got lured to another position outside, by a smaller company, but which was really paying me a much more. You know, at that point in time, and a lot of us go through this at different phases, the money was important to me. And I took a decision to quit and join that other company. It was a big mistake because, money aside, everything else that mattered to me, like culture, like learning, uh, was lacking. And so it was a decision that I regretted. And that's something which really I still bear in mind. After it was very early on, actually it's 20 years back, but it is something that I still remember. It still gives me nightmares. And for me, I will never make that mistake again. I look at a whole lot of other things rather than just salary. And I became wiser with that decision. So it's something that I would urge everyone to be careful on. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake is assuming that one's career path is linear. You know, this is an ever-changing job market, and careers are never in a straight line. In very few jobs, you kind of progress from one to the other in a very linear way. Today, most non-linear careers are the new normal. Gone are the days when you could find somebody at the same company for 30 years, climbing the corporate ladder and then retiring with a healthy pension. That ladder has disintegrated, and it's been replaced with what we call as the corporate lattice, or Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook calls it the jungle gym. So you make a move upward, you may have to change gears, move to something completely different, come down a little bit. So you got to be, that flexibility is critically important. So coming back to that story where I made a wrong move, I was fortunate that I was able to correct it. I was able to leave that company and join a different company, but at a lower position, with a lower salary. But that needs maturity. That needs an ability to eat humble pie. In corporate life, we have to do that all the time. But it's to accept that one has made a mistake and to correct it, and also to accept that your career is not going to be linear. So I made a move down, but I didn't look back from there on. So um, that is something which, again, is it was a big learning for me, a mistake, but a mistake which I corrected, and I hope it helps. My experience helps other people out there. So uh, that is all from my side.
Great, great, Sanjay. So we have been building this community of global thought leaders for cross-pollination of knowledge and best practices. Sanjay, we would like to know your thoughts about this initiative.
I think it's a tremendous initiative. I think there is not enough people like you out there who are doing this. Uh, thought leadership. I think a lot of there are people out there in industry. There are people who are towering personalities out there, and to tap into their knowledge and to get them to speak and address an audience of their peers, people who are at somewhere in mid managers, and even young people, Gen X, who are just starting out and they're on their careers, is critically important. I think what you're doing is an amazing initiative, and any way that I can help in my personal and or professional capacity to further this would be is my contribution or our contribution to society, or to corporate society as it may. I think it's a tremendous initiative, and kudos to you and to Heval Mehta and to the team at Right Source who are putting this together.
Well,
We are honored,
yeah, well,
Sanjay.
thank you so much, Sanjay. To all our viewers and audience, I'm sure this this was a fabulous and insightful session altogether. Well, in all our spotlight interviews, we learn many things from leaders, and adapting those things is really very important. Many things to learn from today's spotlight interview. Few picks. A favorite to me today is what Sanjay mentioned right now is due to course situation right now, people miss on this is balancing the work and family life, which is very, very essential for everyone and important for everyone. I really like the way Sanjay explained the three challenges he faced and he overcome them, right? Possibly when the situation came to Sanjay that he needs to handle this, he might have made a plan that, okay, I'll take care of this in few weeks, possibly months. And Sanjay was there for like 4 years, facing not the challenges, but also the situation out there. So remarkable. And this will really inspire future leaders that this situation and challenge professionally that he has faced also can help someone in his personal life, right? Conversation was really interesting. The entire conversation, what we learned was around employee engagement, innovation, taking up the challenges, and ensuring the results are in favor of business, leadership qualities and skills. Very important thing for the young ones. People choose their career basis the salary offered. This is the biggest mistake that everyone does it, right? Sanjay really mentioned that learn to accept the mistake and correct it. Last line, which is very close and favorite of mine now, is you play to win or don't play at all. So, fabulous spotlight interview, and I'm sure all our viewers will really, really learn a lot from today's session. And adapting many things from this session will take you to the next level. That's a promise. We really thank Sanjay Manohar for his time today and for valuable insights for future leaders. So, thank you so much, Sanjay, for your time.
No, thank you for having me on. It is a great privilege to be here. Really appreciate it, Eval and Zishan.